Hi everyone, my name's Robin Koroluk. I'm joined here with Jordan Wilson. Thanks for joining us for the speaker series with the CFA Society of Saskatchewan. Today we're going to be chatting with you a bit regarding hiring advice. So of course hiring advice is very important. Of course, when you put all of that time and energy into your schooling, you want to make sure that you get the job. So today we're going to chat a bit more about complementary and soft skills, so those skills that are important to get you the job. We're also going to chat with you regarding what employers want and what is your CFA, and we'll explain more on that later. So complementary and soft skills. What is covered with that includes, of course, technical skills. So when we look at technical skills, we want to make sure that you understand financial planning, wealth, tax, insurance, and risk. So, when you go in to do what Jordan and I do, wealth management, you don't need to just know a bit about wealth management. You need to know the intricacies about tax, insurance, risk management, and financial planning. So everyone builds on those technical skills such as insurance. I have my insurance license, which allows me to add value for our clients to provide them with insurance advice. That's just one of many different added values that we do for our clients. It's also important to have industry-specific skills, so understand certain industries and be able to acknowledge the different intricacies, such as in the oil and gas sector, the high-tech sector, cryptocurrency, even fine art. When you're doing certain analysis for certain companies, you can't just not understand how those operations run. Jordan?
Yeah, I just want to flesh that out because when I talk to university students, for example, and this will be equally applicable to high school, when I meet a finance major or someone that's interested in pursuing a career in finance or even accounting in Saskatchewan, one of the first questions I always ask them is, so how did you do on your geology course? And they always look at me and they're like, no, I'm an accounting major. Managerial, tax, financial accounting. Don't take geology. That's for engineers and science majors. And I say, well, you want to live and work in Saskatchewan, right? So whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, a finance person, you're probably going to be working for a company that is in natural resources, oil and gas, mining. Or maybe if you're in public accounting, you're auditing those clients. Maybe if you're Robin or Jordan, your clients work for natural resource companies. So to have that understanding when you go out into your own business world adds value. And it also, more importantly for you, because we're talking hiring advice, is that I'm looking at 50, 100 resumes that are sitting on my desk, and they're all from accounting or finance majors at the U of S. And they've all taken criminology, and they've all taken basket weaving 101 as their electives. And suddenly I see this one student who's taken geology, and I say, this student gets it, because they have managed to sort of look ahead and start addressing what areas, what deficiencies they may have in their finance or accounting background. So again, when you're starting in university, or look at 5 years out, what sort of clients am I going to deal with? What sort of industries might I work in? And then add electives to sort of fill in those gaps. So that's important as well. And the same thing, just to sort of jump in, say with staff management. What you'll find is as your career goes on and you start managing staff and managing organizations, in my case, I managed a global operation. People in Singapore, in Caribbean, in the United Kingdom.
And something you wouldn't have learned in school, I'm sure.
No. And you have to develop those skill sets if you want to advance up the corporate ladder. The HR skills, the human resource skills, the organizational theory skills, the interpersonal skills. So that's very important. And I think back when I looked as a young fellow, my first controllership position, and I was with a company, and I'm in my early 20s, and as I've said to Robin before, you're in your early 20s, you can't even manage your own romantic relationships. You're struggling. And yet I come in and I'm in my early 20s and I've got a 60-year-old grandmother who was one of my accounting staff, and her husband has decided to leave her. Have no skills for dealing with that. I had another employee whose husband, if the fish weren't running, would occasionally beat her. Domestic abuse. Again, you don't learn those skill sets for dealing with that at the University of Saskatchewan's Business College or while articling as a public accountant. So again, those are skills that you have to develop if you want to, grow in whatever career you're in. It's those interpersonal, it's the soft, it's the staff management, those type things are crucial.
Of course.
Now, Robin, the second point we talk about here is written and oral communication. And that's an area that is so important. And again, I think it's another area where I would like to see a resume with someone taking English literature or something, separate skills on presentations or things like that. How do you find it, in your life? Because you deal with clients, you also probably deal with in-house regulators, compliance, legal, that sort of thing. Your bosses too. You need to be professional.
That's right. And it's funny how you communicate with different people in different ways. So you need to be able to read individuals, what sort of communication they need, and be able to provide that to the audience. So whether that be your client, you might talk to them a little differently than, say, your colleague, whom you can talk to at a different way. But with that being said, communication is probably about 80% of my job, and 20% is finance.
Yeah, and I think that's the case in many companies. Is in Robin's case, in my case, you're a financial professional, but how you deal with people, and whether that's hand-holding a client through rough economic times, those require different skill sets, and it kind of separates the wheat from the chaff in one's success and how they deal with that. And in my case, I was in a senior management program at UBS in Switzerland, and they take all the executive directors and send us off on training courses. And one of those courses was they videotaped each of us running a staff meeting. And then afterwards, you had the experts come in and show you how your body language and the words that you used and how you looked at people all conveyed all these subtle nuances or nonverbal cues and how to deal with that. And in my case now, I sit on my hands and refuse to look at anybody. I'm like a poker player with his sunglasses on. But it's just interesting. And again, as you move up the corporate ladder, no one ever asks me, hey, can you calculate modified duration on bonds? Or, do you know what the asset correlation is between those two stocks? No. That's stuff I learned day one. Now I got two colleagues that are fighting. How do I deal with it?
Right.
And that's what's important. Or how do I break some bad portfolio news to a client?
Right. Which brings us on to the next point about problem solving and analytics. I think problem solving is a huge component to most jobs out there, to be honest, but particularly finance. And most employers are looking to have someone that can problem solve and be independent and go out on their own.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Robin. But I think that applies to any job. again, whatever the job you're in, there's going to be problems. And your boss wants people that will bring solutions to the table. Not just, oh, I've got a problem here. It's, boss, I've got a problem, but here's what I think we should do. Because again, it's all about making my life, as the boss, easier. And if you can make my life easier, I'm going to compensate you for that. So people want problem solvers, people that can analyze, people that can be creative, because you often have to think outside the box. And that's so important. And again, that's really got nothing to do with your Finance 101. That's things like joining the chess club. These sort of things that build your mind. Or in my case, martial arts is another example. You can think of many things that sort of, how do I go from A to B? If I'm wrestling on the ground with someone in jiu-jitsu, he's trying to strangle me or break one of my limbs, and he's got a certain toolbox, I've got the same toolbox. How do I offset that?
Right.
So there's always areas that you can use in an interview to show that you've got interesting skill sets that can problem solve.
Right.
And I guess the segue here is to me with foreign languages, because I'm the big proponent of foreign languages. Now, I love foreign languages for a ton of reasons. But the big thing with a foreign language is it's not easy to learn a foreign language. It takes work, especially if you want to become somewhat fluent. So there's a lot of work required, and that's something that's important from a growing your skills side. But then again, the world is shrinking. If you work for a company, you may have business overseas. In my case, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Germany, France, South America. You're dealing with people from different cultures and different languages. Now, they all speak English. In Switzerland, the language at UBS was English. Not difficult to survive in the business world. Out on the street, slightly different. But it's more cultural. Look at your own lives. And I touched on this in one of the other sections on Careers for All, I believe, where a lot of you listening to this will come from first or second generation immigrant families. Look at how your family deals with certain things culturally. It's probably different than North Americans. And by learning a language, you also learn their culture. How the Spanish or South American people respond culturally. You learn while you learn the language. And again, here, I've noted that Tagalog is now the #2 language in Saskatchewan. So if I'm dealing with a client or I'm out meeting people, there's a good chance that I'm going to meet people that come from a Filipino background. So again, it's less than altruistic. I'm there to, or Robin's there to, increase her client base. So if I can have a connection and an understanding of the Tagalog community or the Filipino community, that helps my business. So again, these are win-wins for you building your skill sets, which will help you when you're actually out in whatever industry you're in. Plus, as I put here, it's fun. I love to travel. That's what led me to learn Spanish. I love to spend time in Spain, South America. And it just makes it easier to enjoy the experience because I can communicate to some extent.
Absolutely. So that brings us on to the next portion, which is what employers want. Will it make our lives easier? You've been in a position of hiring many, many times, so you can really relate it, as am I in my current role. Hiring has become a large component, and you kind of know what to look for now to make that a successful acquisition. So first and foremost, we're looking for someone to quickly learn and apply new skills. Typically, when you're onboarding someone, you have a need for that position, so you don't want to take the time and to be able to hold their hand. You want them to learn those skills and apply them quite quickly.
What does onboarding mean?
Bringing them on board to the team, to the company.
A new hire.
A new hire. You got it.
Now, I will differ slightly with Robin, just for more of this discussion purposes. Excuse me. Often when people hire, you want to hire people whose ability is a little bit outside the skill set. If I hire the perfect person for a position, and he or she can come in on day one and do that role perfectly, within 6 to 9 months, they're looking elsewhere because there's the boredom factor. There's no learning. There's no personal or career enrichment. So often what you'll find when you're applying for a job is maybe you got the perfect skill sets for that position, but you don't get hired. And that's because they want someone that, not as Robin said, the hand-holding, because you don't want to go into that side, but you want someone that you can grow over time, because as a company or as a boss, you're investing your own time and corporate resources into that asset, which is you as the new employee. And so we don't want someone that's going to be 6 months and gone. Right. I want to grow them. And in Robin's case, what did you say? You've been at Scotia now for a decade, and you started out on the admin side. So they invested in you, and you grew.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it brings us back to even the point we made on the last slide about problem solving. You're happy to bring someone in, maybe that isn't at where you want them to be, but as long as they can problem solve and learn and be open-minded, that's really the keys to a successful employee. Analysis, synthesis, and recommendations. Continuing education requirements. Again, just quickly learning and applying those new skills. Acting ethically and professionally. Again, in our industry, there's a high standard of ethics and professionalism. So that is very, very much a trait you need to have when you get hired. Handling adversity and perseverance. 1 in 5 entrants attain the CFA designation. So going back to the Chartered Financial Analyst, 1 in 5 people are going to actually complete the program and obtain their designation, which just shows you how difficult it is to attain. But it also proves when someone's hiring someone with a CFA designation that they have the perseverance to get through everything in their current job with you, that they're going to persevere and get that deadline done. You know, they want to make sure that they do the best job. And Jordan always talks from his experience about this perseverance and hiring people with the CFA designation, that you then know what they're going to be like, that someone in Asia who has the CFA designation is the same as someone in Canada. It's not a university you've never heard of.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I've hired people literally around the globe, and if I use University of Saskatchewan or University of Regina as an example, nobody knows anything about those two institutions, maybe outside of Saskatchewan or the prairies. If I'm looking at a resume, or 2 resumes, or 3 resumes, one from University of Sydney, Australia, another from Bristol in United Kingdom, another one from St. Gallen's in Switzerland, how do I compare? I don't know anything about any of those universities. And that's the way it is with the CFA. It's the same exam whether you're in Sydney, Bristol, or St. Gallen's. You write the same exam, you take the same program. So you can compare. It's more of an apples and apples. And I could list a few universities, and I've done this before with Robin, that she's never heard of. 𝐂𝐸 in Madrid or Barcelona. One of the top business schools on the planet. You've never heard of it. You've probably never heard of St. Gallen in Switzerland. One of the top business schools on the planet. So again, you may have heard of Harvard, Stanford, MIT, University of Alberta, which is probably one of the top schools in the world. But if it's in that sort of class that you may not have heard, how do you know if it's a good school or not? Whereas again, the CFA is a standardized program globally so that people can compare other CFA professionals in a similar manner. And I think the other point I'd make there is that it's a difficult program. As Robin said, 1 in 5 entrants become CFAs. Less than 50% pass rates is the norm on each of the 3 levels. For many people that are writing, this will be the first time in their entire life that they fail an exam. And how do you react after that? Do you walk away and say, oh, this is too hard for me, I'm going to, do something else? Be a barista at Starbucks? Or do I get back on that horse and study twice as hard the next time? And again, that's sort of what you want to see in an employee. And that's kind of the whole thing with the CFA designation, and that's why we have it listed here as the true value of the charter. It doesn't matter if I work in a convenience store, if I'm digging ditches, roofing houses. If I'm hiring someone for a position in any of those fields, I want to hire someone that can learn new skills quickly and successfully. Getting the CFA, very, very hard. You have to learn new skills. You have to spend a ton of time learning. You have to act ethically, professionally. I want people that are trustworthy to handle my cash registers, to not steal from a client when they're roofing their houses. I want someone that's going to, when the chips are down and I need you to work on a Saturday, Sunday, I can count on you to come in and do it. I need people that have a work ethic. I need people that bring ideas to the table. And I need people with time management skills. And it doesn't matter what business I'm in. And again, that's to me the beauty of the CFA, is I look at Robin before I ever met her. In fact, I think I met her the day that she received her diploma. Mm-hmm. And I immediately knew that she met each of these criteria. And if I was ever interviewing someone, I see that designation and I say, she's got these skill sets and I need them everywhere. So that to me is the true value of the designation. And the question for you, I think in an interview, as a student is, how do you demonstrate, what is your CFA? What is your story that conveys to the interviewer that you possess all these skill sets that they need in every company? And I think that's sort of the last slide is, what is your CFA? And I think as a hiring advice, it's important for you to create your own story on how you can learn, handle adversity, have a work ethic, manage time. Because again, it doesn't matter law, accounting, finance, ditch digging, everything. You need to demonstrate those skills. And I think if I look at Robin's life, before her CFA, you can always come up with stories to bring those things together. And Robin's probably got a couple. Maybe she can share one.
Yeah, I think the CFA demonstrates, as Jordan alluded to, that strong work ethic. And growing up on a southern Saskatchewan farm, there was a lot of work ethic I learned. There was many times I spent doing a lot of work on the farm, but also off the farm. I learned very young that if I wanted my own money, I had to earn it and I had to get a job. And it just taught me that once you put in the time, you are rewarded. And it was something that I'm happy I learned, and I think more people need to gain that skill set because it does push you to certain places. I would go to school from 9 till 3:30 and worked from 4 till 11 most days. And it was a busy time, but it just kind of set me up for future times, proving that work ethic to myself that I could do it, such as the CFA program and such as other jobs that I've had along the way And it seems to me that you have similar stories or things that touch upon your work ethic that I think it would be good to share with the listeners today, Jordan.
Yeah, and I think it's more just you can find examples of this in your life. You just have to look for it and be prepared in an interview to disclose it. And in Robin's case, I used to be good friends with the managing partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Saskatoon. And he once told me, he goes, I always prefer to hire people that have lived on a farm, grew up on the farm, because I know I will never have to question their work ethic. And again, that's like the CFA. A bit of stereotype, but he assumed that if he saw that they were farmers or from farm families, they'd have that built-in work ethic. And that's what you want. In my case, again, if I was in an interview, I would probably proffer a martial arts story. I have a Taekwondo background. I'm a second-degree black belt, a Taekwondo instructor, referee. And again, it's not easy to achieve a black belt or second dan. It takes work. I have to learn skills, physical skills in this case, but also memorization skills, because you have to memorize different patterns and things to do. Not necessarily adversity, but yeah, you're troubled at times. You're sore, you're tired, you're not progressing. How do you push through that wall and continue to prosper? You do have to work hard. It's not easy to attain those things. And you have to spend the time. I also teach 𝐂𝐸. And again, if you're looking at stories, how do you teach martial arts or self-defense to people? That requires a precision, communication skills, attention to detail. If I teach poorly and the person practicing with Robin ends up snapping her arm because I've been a poor teacher, that has real-world consequences. So again, things like that may not sound like they're applicable to business, but if you think about them and you think about these 5 principles, the ability to learn quickly, handle adversity, perseverance and prosperity, work ethic, time management. There's things in your life, if you look at it and prepare ahead of the interview or ahead of submitting a resume, that you can demonstrate these keys to a potential employer. And that will move you past someone else that didn't think about that. And even I had lunch with a university student a couple of years ago, and she couldn't think of any good stories. And then she tells me, I work the summers in a bakery. Well, okay, you got to get up early, right, to do the baking. It's not good, if someone's birthday and I come in to get my birthday cake and it's misspelled or it's poorly made. So again, even on something like, say, working in a bakery as your part-time or summer job, you can demonstrate these things. You just have to think about them ahead of time and be ready to present.
That's some very valuable advice that I really wish I would have known when I was younger. So I think that wraps us up today. Thank you again for listening. I hope you got at least a few points out of today's series. We want to thank our corporate sponsors today. These series do take a lot of time and resources, and we wouldn't be able to do it without them, and we really appreciate their patronage to the CFA Society of Saskatchewan. Thank you. Hi.